For joining us for this visual ethnography lab on filming the invisible. This lab is organized as part of the conference Sapienza in France, Healing, Cooperation and Imagination, and is part of the network, the HEAL network for the ethnography of healing, that has a visual anthropology section. And is founded by the European Union H2020 program through the Marie Curie Global Fellowship, the Transnational Healing Therapeutic Trajectories in Spiritual Trance that I lead as PI. So after many years of conversation, we finally here organizing this lab for open to students and researchers, and we have our guest who was also the leader of the visual anthropology section of the HEAL network, Roger Canals. Roger Canals is also the PI of ERC project VisualTrust at the University of Barcelona. He's a filmmaker, he's made many renowned films, and is going to share with us some ideas on the invisible, how to film the invisible, the techniques. We're going to do some practical exercises as well. So I leave the floor to Roger, and thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here today. We've been talking with Emily a lot during the past years and designing the whole project and this event. There were the pandemics, a lot of things happened, but the fact is that we are here, and I do hope that this relationship that we are just starting right now will continue the years to come. So feel free to contact me whenever you wish, and as Emily was saying, I'm sure I will be here again, and you're very welcome to Barcelona as well. Well, I would like this session of today to be something useful for you. I mean, I'm sure that you attend a lot of conferences, lectures, you take notes on your notebook, sometimes it's very boring. So I'm not here just to expose myself, oh, I'm a great filmmaker, I've won awards and whatever. This is for you. And so it's good if it's good for you. So I'll try to share with you some of the thoughts, experiences, and films that I've made, but it has to be useful for you. So if you have suggestions, ideas, or you say, okay, Roger, we know that, you raise your hand, and then we change the plan. So which is the plan? The plan is first to talk a little bit about filming the invisible, which is quite a contradictory thing in a way, to show you some films and filmic essays, and then I will propose to you to gather in small groups of 2 or 3 and to imagine, think that imagination and image come from the same root, so imagination has to do with images, and when we film, we imagine. Anyway, so to imagine how the thoughts and experiences I have explained can be applied to your future work. And then to think on potential issues or situations that you may encounter. So then you can share these ideas with me, with Herminia, with the filmmakers that are here on the floor, and then we can comment on them. I mean, cinema is much more about anticipation. I mean, and this is a very important thing. I mean, anticipation is important everywhere, but I mean, in cinema, it's very different from the written language. I mean, in written language, you can write a page, and then you wake up the next day in the morning, you read what you have written, and you said, it is a disaster. It is usually the case. I mean, writing is hard, but reading what you have written is worse. The problem with cinema is that if you don't have that image that you have made during the field work, when you were in Bali, when you were in Puerto Rico, or whatever, then you feel you find yourself on the editing room and you say, wow, I don't have any close shot of this, or I don't have any setting shot of Bali. Let's go to Bali again. Let's spend 10,000 euros there to get this shot. Very great. I mean, I'm sure the producer will be very, very happy. So, cinema is much more about anticipation because, and this is a very important thing, you write with what would be in the written domain the ethnographic notes. And this is one of the things that I love about cinema, that you actually are in contact in a very literal sense, with the ethnographic encounter with the other. You can never get rid of this encounter because words, and I like writing as well, is about transforming senses, experiences into words. But when we work with images, what do we see in images? We see these bodies, we see these colors, we see these movements. In a way, we work with these, let's say, ethnographic impressions that we made, that we gathered on the field. You see what I mean? So this is the explanation for the idea. So when you will imagine about the future situations, then you can share them with us. And we can recreate some of them here. I mean, if you're attending a sacrifice, it will be rather difficult. But anyway, for example, how to film two people talking to each other if you have just one camera. That's very difficult, right? And how to film a healer and a patient. I mean, there are some ethical stances. So we can play a little bit with it if it's fine for you. Is it fine? Yeah?
Yeah.
So let's start. The first thing that I'd like to comment on is that, I mean, filming the invisible is like a contradiction, because cinema is the art of presence. I mean, the idea is that in painting, for example, you can paint what is not in front of you. But cinema, to make an image, you usually need, at least from a realistic point of view, the presence to be in presence of the object of representation. So cinema, filming the invisible, is like a very, let's say, contradictory thing. I liked, for example, this painting by Magritte very much, no? Although now we can analyze it from gender studies as well and all that, and this is absolutely fine. The thing is that the painter gives existence to the image by representing it, by making the image. But in cinema, you really need to be in contact in front of the object of representation to represent it. I mean, now I could make a drawing of a camel, but I can't make a photo of the camel. I would need a camel in front of me and a camera. Okay? So filming the invisible is a kind of contradiction in cinema. And it is fun that actually the invisible, I mean, the world of, let's say, spirits, dreams, hallucinations, or forces, energies, conveying social life, especially in the domain of what we have called the religious, has been one of the main topics of ethnographic cinema. It's like a contradiction, you see? It's something very specific. The thing is that the invisible is never totally invisible. It has different ways of visualization. And that the invisible expresses itself in different modes. And these different modes have to do with bodies, with movements, with colors, with affections, with sensations, with choreographies. And this domain of what is called the materiality, the corporeal dimension of religion, is one of the ways that we have to grasp this invisible. In a way, what is interesting about the anthropology of religion is that it is like the paradigm of something that is going on all the time. I mean, the invisible is everywhere, no? Thoughts are invisible, desires are invisible, future is in a way invisible. Which doesn't mean that it does not exist. And, well, I limit myself in the world of religion and in the world of what is called the sacred. But again, what is interesting with religion and what is thought-provoking is the fact that it gives us the opportunity to think about concepts and ideas that are actually going on all the time. I mean, religion, and very classical definition, has to do with beliefs, no? But beliefs are everywhere. I mean, look at, for example, nowadays with, technology, and I have a short film on technology by the end, no? Artificial intelligence, smart cities, whatever. I mean, it's a kind of neo-mysticism. I mean, it's a kind of technological animism. This is a series where everything's connected, where the machines take on decisions and whatever. So the idea that there are principles, energies that are affecting social life, the way we relate to each other. I mean, ancestors is an important thing in religion, but it's not only about religion. It's a kinship. So in a way, religion is interesting to study religion and to study religion from cinema, not only because religion is important in itself, but because it permits us to tackle questions that in a way are common to all social life and to all sciences. Am I being clear, more or less? So the idea of filming the invisible is about the techniques and ideas that we can do use to explore the invisible and to make it visible through different techniques. So as I want to be useful for you, not only, I have decided to organize my talk in a kind of different advices or tips or ideas, something very clear that you can, I can share with you if you wish. The most important thing is that we don't use the camera just to represent what we already know. We use the camera to know something that we could have not known otherwise. And this is very important. It is not about filming a research, but about doing research through film. These are two different modes of conceiving the use of camera. One thing is, okay, I'm doing a research, I know the conclusions, and I am going to film this conclusion to make a film. This is what we call the representationalist paradigm. We put in images what we already know. But it's much more interesting to use the camera and to use the visual language to understand and to convey something that we couldn't know, that we couldn't convey otherwise. And for that, we need to really understand what an image is and what are the implications of using visual methods in social research. And let's come back to the invisible. It's not about that I have an idea of what invisible is. I have an idea of how ancestors, energies, spirits, forces, principles may interact within social life, passing through us, and then I make a film about that. This is fine, but let the door open to transform your own ideas and concepts while using a camera. Because this is what really justifies visual research. We do not film a research, we do research through film. So we discover the world while filming it. And this is another way of approaching it. And this has to do, or this applies to editing as well. And I will talk about editing a little bit. Am I being clear? Yeah? Editing is not just, editing is great, and I'll talk about it a little bit, because editing, you really construct the narration, the sense of images, because images get a sense by their relation to other images. So editing is very relational as an activity. It's a very intellectual activity in this sense. But editing is not only about organizing the scenes and making a narration. Editing is research. Editing does not come after the research. In ethnography, we give so importance to the ethnographic moment that we think, okay, this is research, and then I do the editing. No, editing is part of the research. We understand things while we edit the film by connecting images with other images. This is an intellectual activity. You see what I mean? So, again, the idea that to search the specificity of cinema. Let me start giving some examples from the films that I have made in the past. And please let me know if I'm not clear in any what I've said about the invisible at the beginning, which was perhaps a little bit unclear, will become more clear while commenting the films that I will be showing to you. Well, I've been working during a long time, and now we go back almost 15 years ago, something very connected with Candomblé. I've been studying a religious cult from Venezuela called the Culto de Maria Leonza, Maria Leonza cult. Maria Leonza is a female figure who is represented as an Indian woman, mixed race woman, mestiza, a black woman, or as a white woman, sometimes identified with the devil, sometimes identified with the Virgin Mary, and there is a lot of iconography around her. She descends into the body of people during possession ceremonies and whatever. So this was the theme of my thesis some time ago, okay? And so this, what I will show you is a very bad copy of the first film I made as part of my PhD in France at l'École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales. And so I was very obsessed with this idea of how do we see or visualize a divinity. Of course, there are images, there are dreams, there are modes of imagination, but Maria Leonza was represented in so many different ways. Some said that she looked like a kind of Indian woman, very sexy or whatever. Others said that she was totally different. So I really like this iconographic pluralism. And then again, what I try to do is to make a film about this. How to make a film about this? Let's try to make, I thought, a film about different experiences of visualizing or representing Maria Leonza. So, there is a legend saying that there was a man who was a professor in Venezuela who saw Maria Leonza for the first time. And this man is dead, but his spirit can descend into the body of Miriam. So I proposed to a medium to embody this spirit, because you can call for the spirits to come down. And then I decided to have an interview with this person and to ask this person how Maria Leonza looked like. So it was a way of taking taking people seriously, which is actually what anthropology is about, okay? And so I will show you this moment, and then a ritual in which Maria Leonza descends and something happens, and I will comment this to you. So I designed, now I'm not working on Maria Leonza anymore, but I designed a website called Maria Leonza Goddess in Motion, in which I put all my publications, including a book which will be published in Spanish in 2 months, articles, the films that I've made on Maria Leonza, an exhibition that I made in Barcelona about this, that I can show you afterwards, and a participatory website that I was running for a time, in which I show different images of Maria Leonza, and I let believers to send images as well of their altars, ceremonies, and whatever. So this is again an interesting way of doing a multi-modal anthropology, when you do a website, not only to show what you have done, but to give a continuity to the research itself. So a website as a kind of research platform or device, rather than just as a way of dissemination. This is multimodal anthropology as well. But let's go back to the film. Spanish with English subtitles.
Els creients diuen que si hi ha algú que sap com és el rostre de Maria Leonza, aquest és Lino Valles. A Maracaibo, Joan Aulard afirma poder ser posseït per Lino Valles.
Oh. Carajo. En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo.
Amén, Señor.
Hoy lindo valle venir a todos los hermanos presentes. Carajo. Alabado sea María Virginal, que llevó 9 meses a nuestro Señor Jesucristo en su vientre. Carajo. ¿Y cómo están? ¿Cómo están esos estudios? Gracias. No. El cacique el que se llama el más arrecho. El que lleva los guayucos en el lugar, carajo.
Hermano, este es un seguidor y quiere conocer el culto de María Leonza, seguidor de usted, porque le llama la atención su inteligencia, cómo conoció a María Leonza, quiere que le dé su relato, todo lo que es el culto de María Leonza, y quiere tener su imagen y su... ¿qué es lo que...
¿Cómo se llama usted?
Mi nombre es Roger Canals.
Roger Canals. Y ese nombre de persona catalán.
Cierto, hermano.
Me vais a conocer y te voy a decir muchas cositas. Porque fui el primer espíritu que conoció a la Reina Madre.
¿Y cómo es ella?
Ella es una mujer tan linda, tan bella, de que las esculturas que han hecho con ella no es así. María Leonza es una mujer de cabello largo, muy culta, muy celestial. Ella habla con una tonalidad de voz muy fina. Ella habla muy pacíficamente, quiere la paz para el mundo, muy linda, con rasgos españoles. Pero es hija de indio. Ella no es francesa, ella no es latina, ella es india, de ojo café, de piel clara, muy clara, y tiene un tributo muy lindo, por eso que la respeto y la quiero bastante.
Amén, Señor. Así sea.
¿Y cómo tenía la piel María Leonza cuando la vio?
Blanca, muy blanca y muy transparente. Ella no quiere ser venerada por ninguna iglesia o por ningún sacerdote, sino por los mismos seres humanos de que llevan ese culto aquí en su corazón, porque así fue como se me presentó ella, como una persona tan linda, de sus cabellos largos.
Els creients del culte afirmen que, a part dels somnis, les visions i les aparicions, la manera de poder estar el més a prop possible de Maria Leonza és assistir a un ritual en què la deessa baixa a l'interior del cos d'un mèdium. A Baruta, als voltants de Caracas, Bàrbara és freqüentment posseïda per Maria Leonza. Aquest dia, Bàrbara és posseïda, en primer lloc, per Maria Leonza com a índia i, en segon lloc, per Maria Leonza com a reina. Se'ns va prohibir filmar la primera possessió i el moment de substitució espiritual que va portar a la segona identitat de Maria Leonza.
Cuando ella esté incorporando, dejamos de grabar hasta que la reina nos dé permiso, porque mientras si la reina no nos da permiso personalmente a ella misma, no podemos grabar. fuerza y poder en estos santos que están momentos de Dios, por ser santos invocando cuadro protector y espíritu guía, que sea misterio en los únicos santos del santo en el santo permiso para trabajar con Dios en el ámbito espiritual en este santo sagrado momento en el nombre de Dios Todopoderoso. Invoco la fuerza y el poder en el poder santo momento de los cuatro vientos, de los cuatro puntos cardinales, de los cuatro elementos.
Okay, so sorry because it was rather long, but I think it's a sequence that encapsulates a lot of things which interest us. For example, we see that the invisible, if we define the invisible as a part of the reality that is not given to us in our day-to-day visual experience of the world, is not an enrichable domain, but is a domain that operates through different modes of visualization, which have different codes and which require different attitudes, both methodologically speaking and ethically speaking. So what I'm interested in, the first part of the scene, is that this medium is possessed by Lino Valles. So Lino Valles had this vision, and actually Lino Valles is speaking through the body with the eyes closed. So when visual anthropology is an anthropology of the visual, including anthropology of the act of looking and being seen, okay? And so he talks, he gives an oral description, and you may say, well, this is not visualizing because he's talking. In other films they use drawings for that. But it's not true, because when he's talking about Maria Leonza, you are imagining Maria Leonza in your own head. So you are visualizing her. So you're prompting the spectator to make an image, because seeing is imagining. When we see, we complete what we see with what we imagine that it could be, with the potential domain of the visual. You see what I mean? So you have to play with the spectator to make it active, in the sense that it's not just, the sense of the image is not on the image, but it's in the contact between the images and the people looking at these images. And you have to anticipate this. And this is a mode of the visualization as well. So you imagine Maria Leonza through the words of this person, and then I make a trick. Because through editing, she said, muy bella, de cabello largo. And I put this young lady possessed by Maria Leonza. Well, it's a way of saying in editing, this girl, in a way, represents Maria Leonza. So I am visualizing it, but I'm not saying it through words, but through editing. Some would say, well, this is an imposing of sense, perhaps. We can discuss, okay? Everything is an imposing of sense. I'm imposing sense because I'm talking to you. And then if you talk to me and you say, Roger, I expected more from you. It was not that good. This is an imposing of sense as well. So we are always imposing sense. There are not a more natural way of making ethnographic film than others. There are naturalized styles, but not natural. So styles that have been naturalized. You see what I mean? The important thing is to be honest, to be fair. Not to try to show something as a kind of pure reality when actually it is constructed. Let's say it's constructed. Anthropology is about discourses, about giving opinions, meanings to the world. But they have to be, well rooted. So, and this is a very important thing. I decided to say in words, I would make the voiceover differently today, but anyway. The visual prohibitions, and this is a very important thing. We learn a lot about what we cannot film. And in general in anthropology, and specifically in anthropology of religion, we learn a lot about our mistakes during the fieldwork, and you will make a lot of mistakes when you start filming. Don't worry. Mistakes such as, I didn't charge my batteries yesterday evening because I was too tired in my hotel, till mistakes like I put myself between the healer and the patient, and this is totally forbidden from a ritual point of view. You have to make them, and it's part of the process, and you can learn a lot about that. And here, for example, I was forbidden to film the first possession, and then for the second one, the person said, you can't film the trance. You got actually the crisis, the moment when Maria Leonza descends into the body. But why not? This is an interesting thing. And on top of that, she said, you can't put yourself in front of the possessed person, to make a kind of direct, straight, close shot. Because, and I said, why not? Because the person being possessed cannot be her own eyes reflected on the lens of the camera. Because it's too dangerous, because the energy going out from the eyes would bounce on the lens and would return to the person. And would return inverted, because you know that actually images invert, our brain actually re-invert what is inverted. Well, this is super interesting from a visual anthropological point of view. But this is something that I learned because I had a camera. And then you make a film, but you have to reflect upon these things. And for example, I wrote an article called The Mirror Effect, Seen and Being Seen in the Cult of Maria Leonza, where I analyzed this moment of where you cannot film, of where you cannot see. And these forbidden, these interdictions are a way of filming the invisible as well. Why so? It seems like a contradiction, but it makes you imagine this. Why you can't do this? Well, it's a way of approaching it. You visualize it. You imagine it. Are you following me? Yeah? Do you find it more or less interesting and useful?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So that would be the idea of the forbidden shot, which is actually one of the sections of this article that you can find in open access, I think, where I analyze this sequence, visual prohibitions and the mirror effect, and filled a last section called Cinema Vision and the Sacred, which has to do a lot with our seminar. Well, so I've said, do not put in images what you already know. Try to learn something specifically visual through the use of visual devices and images. And take people seriously. Another, a second advice that I would say, and it's very connected to the first one, is leave a place for the unknown. I would define ethnographic cinema as the cinema of the unexpected. And cinema of the unexpected means that you actually, again, you don't film what you already know, but you discover something new by filming. And this has to do another thing. It has to do with another thing, is that you have to be able, I think, to get inspired by the field and to turn a specific ontology into a cinematic aesthetics. What does it mean? Well, it means that is, for example, I have filmed in many altars, images. And they say, well, altars, these are not images, these are persons. When, during the ritual, the images are, what we call in this project, intensified. Right? They acquire a sense of presence. They are not representations. Okay? So, images are persons. Great. But this is not just a theoretical stance. You have to be able, as filmmakers, to turn this theoretical idea into specific cinematic aesthetics. So you have to film images as persons. How to do so? Well, this is your art of filming. I mean, look at some of the masters in the history of cinema, how they can give an object a sense of subjectivity. So the way you film, the length of the shots, the kind of shots, is inspired, or should be suggested, by the own ontology of the place where you are filming. And this has to be with taking people seriously and with leaving this place for the unknown, because you don't go with your own aesthetics, with your own idea, I'm going to make a film like this. In a way, you construct the cinematic language according to the specificity of each place. Are you following me? So, I will show you another very brief film, and we can discuss about this. And the unknown and the mistakes, and taking people seriously, and turning, let's say, local ideas, emic ideas, about the invisible into a cinematic methodology and language is the art of, I would say, cinematic ethnography in religious contexts. And I'm going to show you a film that a very short film that I've made some months ago in Puerto Rico. And actually, it lacks one intertitle, so I will explain this intertitle to you. And in this film, it was in an esoteric shop full of images everywhere. And I asked the medium to comment on the images that he had about different kinds of states. And it was very dark, so I put a torch. You have to be careful with torches in religious domain because, I mean, torches have batteries have energies. Batteries and torches are a way of turning invisible into visible because you put light in places where there's no light. So it transformed the visual landscape. Okay? So it's not just a matter of saying, as in some colleagues of mine in, commercials, I need light. Well, wait for that. Can I light this part of the room? What are the implications of doing so, and how? Well, my torch had a color mode, which actually is like a disco party, because it's flashes of red, yellow, green, and blue. And by mistake, I put it on. And I said, I'm sorry. But he said, this is great. When I'm in trance, this is the way I see images. And so we decided to turn the film with this mode. This is what actually is not set in the film, and I asked my graphic designer to write an intertitle for me for that, but I hadn't had time to put it into it. And so we made this experiment, and I like very much the word experiment. This is again one of the tips that I'm going to give you. I think that we have to be experimental, and experimental doesn't mean to copy the aesthetics of avant-garde cinema, it means that we can only know something new if we use new methods or new ways of doing things. Otherwise, the method gets verified itself all the time. You see what I mean? So let's see this short experiment, which is called The Color of Spirits. And it's very much about visualization again. So this is part of the VisualTrust project. This is an ERC consolidator grant that I started 2 years ago, which has to do with what do we do with and through images in terms of trust and mistrust. Why people consider some images more trustworthy than others, and what kind of actions these judgments, these impressions entail. In the domain of religion, where the idea of the false idols or the true image is very important, as you know, but also in the domain of science. I mean, you see photographs of outer space that are completely simulated, but people take them as true. And if a doctor says, look at your body, this is not good, you have to stop smoking, the images and the confidence and the trust that you project on it makes you change your way of life or not. And in the domain of, let's say, social images, I mean, the fake is everywhere, photography is not a visual evidence anymore, blah, blah. So we are working with all that. And I am the PI of the project, but also responsible of a specific ethnographic task about images in Afro-American religions, among which Puerto Rican spiritism, which allows me to go to Puerto Rico from time to time to put a distance with my day-to-day work. Let's see it.
Antes cuando he puesto las luces de colores,
Sí.
me has dicho que te parecía
Interesante.
interesante. ¿Por qué?
Sí, le da vida a la imagen.
¿Quiere entonces fumar del tabaco con los colores? ¿Qué te parece?
Como los colores del tabaco debe ser interesante.
Vamos a ver.
Sí.
Vamos a hacer ese experimento. ¿Cuál? ¿Este te parece bien?
¿Ah?
Este te parece
Sí, seguro. Excelente. Ok, mamá. Permiso. Dele Juan. Su permiso en bongo. Yo tengo ahí una preparación. No sé si acepten que la filmen. Ok.
Podemos pedir permiso, ¿no?
Sí. Pido que se abran las puertas para Javier el canal, que lo que está haciendo sea fructífero para él, para esta casa. Que usted nos dé la bendición, mamá. Si observa, está cambiando su rostro. Con calma te vas a dar cuenta que va cambiando el rostro, ese producto de la espiritualidad que tiene ella.
El rostro de la imagen está cambiando.
Sí. Se pone en evidencia de que detrás de ella hay una tribu. Lo mismo ocurre con el indio ojo de águila.
¿Tú ves cómo el rostro del indio está cambiando?
Vamos a hacer la prueba.
Vamos.
Déjame botar la ceniza. Observa. Bueno, al indio de la casa, este es un indio vigilante que cuida. cambia el color de sus ojos. ¿Quieres que le eche un humo a Santa Bárbara? Déjame echar la ceniza. Con su permiso, mamá. Dice que ayuda a su dueña, que le dé fuerza, que supere la enfermedad. Acompáñela. ¿Quieres que te enseñe? A la preparación que tengo. De acuerdo. Papá, con su permiso, vamos a enseñarle. Su permiso, mamá.
Y eso no todo el mundo lo puede ver, ¿verdad?
No. No. Se han dejado ver por ti, pero nunca lo han hecho con nadie.
I think that I'd like to say a couple of things with this film. Keep this image as a. First, the idea of the mistake of the beginning, but then, as you see, well, there is a kind of ontological clash, no? But this ontological clash permits to make it visible something that actually wouldn't be visible in ordinary life. Because, I mean, he says, well, the face of the image is changing. But of course it is. I mean, there is a torch in green, blue, and I mean, it's like a disco at a party. But actually he's not saying that it is changing because of the torch. Because actually, even without the torch, when he intensifies the image through tobacco, which is a medium of intensification, the image becomes a living being. And as living beings, it moves, it changes. So actually, what he's saying, I think, but I can be wrong, is that the changing of the color permit us to grasp, to see, to imagine what actually would happen in a ritual where images become living beings. And the way he sees the image during the ritual is not exactly the same way as we see the image during this experiment, but there is an idea of analogy. You see what I mean? And this analogy is a mode of visualization, of making the invisible visible again through experimentation, through a kind of dialogue. I would say a dialogical experimentation on regimes of visibility. Nice. And this, again, prompts our imagination. What would it be to see images as living beings? Because I have been asked for filming rituals to ask permission to images. And I was waiting for a response, and they said, the image was doing like this. Can't you see it? And I said, no, I can't. But anyway, it doesn't mean that it's not true. It means that it's not visible for me at a specific moment. So with this experiment, we are in the domain of the analogy, of the suggestion, of the imagination, and it's a way of visualization as well. You see what I mean? And then, at the beginning, as you see, the ethnographic cinema is performative. We transform reality while filming it. Okay? And so the regimes of visibility, what can be seen are not seen, evolved during the film. So the film does not film a reality, but produces a new reality while filming it. Because at the beginning he says, well, I have an altar there, but no one can see it. We can, and then I said, we can ask for permission. Of course, I have to make a film, I need to make some. And he said, well, we'll see. And then there's the whole thing, Indio Ojo de Águila, Indio Guardián, Santa Barbara. He talks about me, so it's a way of being reflexive, which is one of the main features of ethnographic cinema, I would say. And at the end he says, well, I'm going to ask permission. He smokes, and he says, now you can film it. And I film this altar. And he uses the third person of the plural. Nunca se han dejado ver antes. Lo han hecho para ti. Which would be, they have never allowed themselves to be seen, ever. But they decided to be visible for you. And it's not for me, and it's for me and for you. Because when we make a film, we transform the regime of visibility of what we are filming, because we are making it public. And of course, I have the permission by this person for showing this film today. So something happens in terms of visibility during the film and as a consequence of the act of filming, which turns something that was invisible into visible, because this altar was hidden, and at the end of the film, it is visible. You see what I mean? And then again, imagination. What is this day? Because we see a kind of machete, no? So what is this day? It has to do with imagination. And ethnographic cinema, I think, especially in religion, has to do a lot with this openness, with this idea of suggestion. We don't have to make films where everything is clear, closed, and explained. The pure ethnographic feeling is not the one of knowing everything, but of being puzzled, of the unknown. There are domains that we cannot fully understand. And we understand them by not understanding them, in the sense that it's by not understanding them that we can conceive them as a potential domain of reality, at least for other people. You see what I mean? Okay, I'll try to be brief and then to wrap everything up, show you a couple of more films, if it's fine for you. Are you very tired? No? Is it fine? Good. So as you say, I think that when you use cinema, you have to think, why am I using cinema? I'm not using cinema for doing the same thing that I would do without cinema. but to do something specifically cinematic. So cinema, as I was saying, is mostly the art of presence. We film what it's in front of us. Then we can use drawing, animation, artificial intelligence, whatever. I think that all this is totally fair for ethnographic cinema. But the filming, I mean, you film, as I was saying, what you have in front of you, okay? So when you film a religious event, I think that an important thing is to try to go beyond the discourse, beyond words. It doesn't mean that you can't do interviews or whatever, but don't show rituals or events as illustrations of previous verbal explanations, which is the fact in a lot of documentary films, that you have someone saying, we do this ritual for this and this and this is the meaning, and then you see the ritual, and then there's someone explaining, and then you see the ritual. Because in this sense, this is images or action or body is just a kind of illustration of what is being said before. But there is always a friction between what people say and what people do, especially in the domain of religion, okay? So, and cinema is particularly strong for filming, I would say, bodies, movement, colors, actions, music, non-verbal language. So I would recommend you, when using cinema, to try to approach reality from this perspective, having these topics in mind, to see a kind of this sensorial material approach to religion as ways of modes of visualization of something that is not directly visible, and then to contrast it with words and with interviews. But don't take one thing as the illustration of the other. You see what I mean? And there's a lot of ways of doing interviews. I mean, you can do what it's called talking head, a head talking. But then there's interviews in motion, interviews in action, interviews with different people talking to each other, photo elicitation, during which people comment on images, and it's a way of doing an interview which is more lively and dynamics. Okay? I'll show you a couple, the beginning of a film, and then a short film, you could say, in which I try to focus on this sensorial, corporeal approach to religion. In 2017, I went to Guinea-Bissau in Africa, invited by my friend Professor Ramon Sarró from the University of Oxford and Professor Marina Temudo from Lisbon. So they had been doing field work in Guinea-Bissau with a prophetic movement called Qianyang, which can be translated as the shadows. Very beautiful name, by the way. So we decided to make a film about the Qianyang. Again, we went there because they thought they were the ethnographers. I was there as a filmmaker. That the Qianyang was in a clear decline. But actually, when we got there, we realized that the Qianyang was very lively. So the whole film changed. This is great when it happens. When I have a student saying, "Oh, Roger, I thought that it was going to be like this, and I'm desperate because it's in another way," that's good news. Anyway, so I show you the film is in open access in this Journal of Anthropological Films made by our friends from the University of Bergen. This is a very nice journal in which you can find in open access a lot of anthropological films. And I will show you the beginning and a short moment of the in the middle of the film. Okay? Are you ready?
Yes.
esli e falandi usadi trabalho caminta trabalha yo esli e falan suma gente na punta a voz na punta nos qual tipo de trabalho que nós trabalha e falandi uma pan conta voz uma ele tem mensinho que está da gente que está doente nesli como pan conta voz ele está corta quem está doente li e fala para falar voz como ele e grande curandeiro e fala voz li na coli e que tem que cata cura quem tem problema de dor de barriga e está cura se dono quem tem diarreia e está cura se dono quem na ramassa e está cura se dono quem tem mole como está cura contente e doença que está batendo em sim um lado está curando tudo li e fala li sumeli cedo um curandeira garante e tá leva gente fala bana blanya mas é com salinda mas quando conta voz como é com salinda mas tem que vir com dias e tem que batalhar a gente que é água salgado para poder ajudar a gente para ter boa saúde.
Okay, I will show you another moment of the film, but let me just give you a couple of ideas about this. As you see, well, we start with the text, but with the wind, the sound of wind. This is made in post-production. This is totally fake, let's say it like this. But why do we use the wind? Well, it's not just because we like it, but because Qian Yang themselves say that being possessed by spirits is like being pushed by the wind. So they use the metaphor of wind, which is rather universal. And with Emily and Ramon, we've been hours talking about the wind. I mean, these kind of things that anthropologists need to do. And the wind is a mode of visualization which has something to do with the spiritism as well. Because you can't see the wind. You can't see the wind, but you can see the effects of the wind on things. So you see the branches of a tree moving because of the wind. You see? So in a way you can't film most of the time what we call the spirits or the ancestors or some entities that interact with bodies, but you can see the effects of these on bodies, on objects, on feelings, and cinema is strong for filming that. And then it's again an act of imagination, because if I say, okay, the wind is like being possessed by a spirit, you haven't been possessed by a spirit, at least from our point of view. Others would say that you are constantly being possessed by a spirit that are passing through our bodies. But you know the experience of the wind. So again, we are in the domain of the analogy, of imagination. And it is a way of visualization again. So now when you walk in the street and there is wind around you, think on the Qian Yang. And think that you are in a world where something is being visualized, evoked through their effects on the world. And then it starts with this person doing this prayer just in front of the cameras, which is again a body, a corporal expression, which is very good. Cinema is very good at that. Okay? And then it's true, we have an interview. But this interview is an interview that I would call an interview in action. And I would invite you to try to experiment on that. So instead of just putting her on a chair and asking her questions, she is writing in a prophetic alphabet that only she can read under the influence of a Qian Yang, that is, of an ancestor. So he's talking while doing things. And the alphabet is a mode of visualization again. It's a mode of making visible something that is not usually visible. Because this is a prophetic alphabet. And actually, if you realize, and words are important, she's talking about herself in third person. Here, it is said that you will come. So we already knew that you would come. So, I mean, and then here it is said that I have to tell you that she, that means her, is a great healer. So you see how the ethnographic relationship between me and her is being shaped while filming. So the cinema is an agent, an active device in defining, consolidating, reshaping the ethnographic relation. We don't have to hide this. On the contrary, I would say that one of the features of ethnographic cinema is to make it explicit. And it is reflexivity. Reflexivity is to make it explicit the conditions of production of cinema itself. And this is one of the important aspects, I would say, of the kind of cinema that we make. And so then there are different people in the film using drawings to visualize spirits and all this. I will just give you
As mutale ora ko difunto na trabalha. Spirit, porque boa eta kiri esse tipo algoritmo.
Sim. Deu consiga que a massa divertida crescente. Muito deviar casência diver, porque divar informação. E a cruz. Vai casia tremação do var, sul devia criação como sente. Se que tu a massa devia criação. Nesta taça de caso, moça e cromação. Fortemente liga consciente. Porque sem cromação vigor. No senso de ver, longe sentido. Cara tem consciente de ver, isso é mulher, representa divulgação. De covarde tentação massar fortemente ao crânio bizarro. Para sempre e divulgação. João levado. Chegar no sucesso, muita vigor massagem.
So this is interesting, I think, instead of filming the visible, because I mean, drawings are very useful. And there is a huge interest in drawings in contemporary anthropology as mode of visualization, because drawings are not an art of presence as cinema, I would say. It's not exactly the same. Again, I can draw a camel here, but I can't take a photograph of a camel here. So right now artificial intelligence, even though it gets the aesthetics of analogic photography, it has more to do with drawing rather than with photography, although we call it digital photography. Are you following me? So drawings are good, for example, for desire, for dreams, for hallucinations. And I have made experiences of making people draw things and paint things. And here, I like it because, I mean, it makes visible something about the world of this person, the entities that inhabit this world with this notebook that he has. And I like because the act of reading, what reading means, and this is anthropology, no? That things can mean or be, to put it more radically, other things than what we already know. And this is why anthropology is so interesting, because it's like throw yourself into the unknown. So he's reading without reading. I mean, he's reading without looking at the notebook. He's reading like this. He's turning the pages, but he's not looking at them. So it's another way of understanding reading. You see it? And it's a mode of visualization again. So in this film about the Qi and Yang, we use the drawings, we use the alphabets as mode of visualization, but of course there are a lot of, let's say, rituals in which we see, for example, as we are on healing, we have been talking about healing. There are rituals in which people are being healed, and like in here this patient. But it's very important the fact of going backwards. Ramon Sarro is very good at that. Going backwards means reversing the bad spirit that is in the person. So, so there's a lot of sequences like this, but this is not what I wanted to show to you, is that I'm waiting for a white shot. Okay. Another important aspect that I think that you can take into account is, and I've been using this word a little bit, is reflexivity, as the act of making it explicit, the process between what we can say the process of making the film and the final product of the film itself, and the conditions of production of the film itself. See? So, some time ago, I started to experiment on a kind of anthropological, I didn't want to observe an exhale, of anthropological genre. And all this is in a book that I just published, but in Catalan. It will appear in English soon. And perhaps one day in Italian, if you know a publisher that would be interested in publishing in Italian, that would be very good. Which is what I call the ethnographic making of. So I love making offs because you see a superhero in a making of, you see an ordinary man in front of a green wall doing like this. No? And I like it because some people say that it's a pity because then in the making of it's like that the magic of cinema fades. And I would say the other way around. For me, it's like the power of magics. But the ethnographic making of is more about making it explicit the very conditions and problems and thoughts that you had while making the film. So in a way, is somehow a contradiction in ethnographic making of, because if we say if we say to indigenous people to wear in traditional way because of the film, well, the ethnographic making of should include this. This situation. Yeah? But actually, the film should include it too. But in a way, what I want to say is that in ethnographic cinema, there's not an opposition between the product and the process, as in fiction film. You see, in a way, the film should give you an idea of how the film has been made. You see what I mean? But an ethnographic making of could be a kind of more reflexive, intimate, a filmic piece in which you really talk about the very process of making films. You see what I mean? So I decided to do this with more or less success, but you have to try live, by making a short film called Wind and Words, Emily has seen, I think, and which is what a kind of cinematic piece on an ethnographic making of, and which has to do a lot of how do we visualize what cannot be directly seen. So again, voiceover in Catalan, subtitles in English.
El cinema és l'art de les ombres. La càmera ens permet reproduir la realitat en moviment, momificar el temps, transmutant imatges, la nostra mirada sobre el món. Però el cinema ens obre també la possibilitat d'acostar-nos als altres, de relacionar-nos. El cinema és l'art de les ombres. La càmera ens permet reproduir la realitat en moviment, momificar el temps, transmutant imatges la nostra mirada sobre el món. Però el cinema ens obre també la possibilitat d'acostar-nos als altres, de relacionar-nos-hi, de mostrar als altres com els veiem i copsar com ens veuen a nosaltres. L'abril del 2017, un equip d'antropòlegs i jo vam anar a Guinea-Bissau a filmar els membres d'un moviment profètic anomenat Qian-Yang, les ombres. Van filmar els seus cossos, els seus objectes, la seva escriptura. Però aviat aquesta aventura va plantejar tot un seguit de qüestions al voltant del fet de filmar els altres i els seus esperits, els problemes que sorgeixen en voler filmar les ombres. La primera qüestió que es planteja és la de la nostra pròpia presència, del fet de ser allà, equipats d'una càmera, en el seu espai, filmant-los, transposant els seus cossos i la seva escriptura en imatges. Què volem nosaltres d'ells i què volen ells de nosaltres? El que és clar és que un cop allà, amb ells, allò que filmem no és una realitat objectiva, una realitat en si, sinó una realitat compartida, la realitat del cinema. Per exemple, quan filmàvem les cerimònies dels Qian-Yang, sense entendre allò que dèiem, estàvem convençuts de que ignoraven totalment la càmera, de que durant el ritual parlaven de les seves preocupacions, dels seus esperits, dels seus avantpassats, dels seus mites. Només més endavant, i un cop feta la traducció, vam adonar-nos de que estaven constantment parlant de nosaltres, dels antropòlegs que volien conèixer-los a través d'una càmera. Si nosaltres parlem d'ells, per què no haurien de parlar ells de nosaltres? El que aquestes imatges mostren és que mai no filmem els altres, sinó la relació que establim amb ells. Una relació fílmica. Després hi ha la qüestió del punt de vista. El problema no és només quina realitat estem filmant, sinó com filmar aquesta realitat. I és que tota mirada és una elecció, una tria, una interpretació del món. Tot pla és la negació d'altres plans possibles. Per exemple, on és millor situar-se en filmar un ritual? Ens mantenim lluny de la gent? O intentem acostar-nos-hi? Davant la possessió espiritual, el cinema sempre ha tingut la temptació del rostre, sense poder esclarir, però, a qui pertany el rostre d'un home posseït. I com filmem? Normalment filmem amb la intenció d'expressar el nostre punt de vista. Volem fer bones imatges, que visualitzin la nostra manera de veure el món. Però què és una bona imatge? Les bones imatges per nosaltres són les millors per representar els altres. Sovint volem representar els altres, els embellim, però és aquesta la millor tria. Perquè també podríem intentar filmar per expressar el punt de vista dels altres. Però com? Com veuen el ritual els fills de Déu i els avantpassats que penetren en el cos del mèdium? Ens diuen que el Qian-Yang és com el vent. Però com hi veu el vent? És similar al fet de mirar a través d'una càmera en moviment? Tota pel·lícula amaga rere seu la possibilitat d'innombrables pel·lícules diferents, que mai no es faran, que mai no veurem. Tota pel·lícula té les seves ombres. El tercer problema és el de la comprensió i la traducció. Un dels obstacles amb què ens vam trobar a l'hora de rodar i muntar aquesta pel·lícula va ser que moltes de les persones que hi apareixen parlaven balanta, una llengua que en gran part no compreníem. Per muntar la pel·lícula vam haver de recórrer amics balanta perquè ens ajudessin a traduir el que la gent deia, del balanta al creol o el portuguès.
Deus é sacrifício. Deus é sacrifício. É sacrifício. Também aqueles que têm demônios é sacrifício para eles.
Aquesta traducció conté paraules com diable i no coincideix amb una altra traducció del mateix fragment feta per una altra balanta.
O caminho de Deus é sacrifício. Deus é sacrifício. É como aqueles que querem, que seguem o unen. Es sacrificio.
El camino de Dios, la música dice, el camino de Dios, la palabra de Dios es un sacrificio, es muy dura, pero los que están en el espíritu, los espíritus, también están en el sacrificio.
La traducció, com el cinema, mai no és una transposició directa de la realitat. La paraula diable ha estat aquí traduïda per esperit. Traduir és trair, sí, però també és la possibilitat d'explorar els racons del llenguatge, de comunicar, de bastir un pont cap als altres. Escoltem ara aquesta frase. Què significa això? A què es refereix quan parla d'un tanc? Hem d'intentar explicar aquestes paraules i expressions o les hem de deixar en la seva aparent ambigüitat? Però el problema a l'hora de fer aquesta pel·lícula no ha estat només traduir els membres d'aquest moviment profètic, els anomenats fills de Déu. Ha estat sobretot traduir el que diuen els esperits, els qiang-yang, les ombres.
Déu confia que la massa divertida crescent. Tu que sent missatge que la massa divertida sa?
Diem que aquest llenguatge és intraduïble, però no és aquest terme una forma de traducció. Diem que és una glossolàlia, però realment aquest concepte descriu el que és la llengua dels avantpassats. I és que els qiang-yang parlen per moltes vies. En una escena de la pel·lícula es veu un ritual d'adivinació. Si la mà toca la carbassa, és que l'esperit diu que sí. Si la mà no la toca, és que l'esperit diu que no. En tocar la carbassa a la pel·lícula hi hem posat el subtítol sí. Estem subtitulant la paraula del germà mort del qiang-yang que parla a través de la seva mà. Estem subtitulant un mort, un esperit, una ombra, la carbassa, el gest de la mà, el so de l'impacte dels dits. Ja són en si mateixos signes a la paraula qiang-yang, als quals nosaltres afegim les traduccions, els subtítols, el muntatge, traduccions de traduccions, signes de signes, textos de textos, imatges d'imatges. És així com ens arriba la paraula dels esperits. Però aquest joc de traduccions no és en certa mesura el que estem fent sempre. I al final ve la qüestió del muntatge i de l'explicació, és a dir, d'allò que diem sobre les ombres. Algú va dir que les pel·lícules etnogràfiques no haurien de tenir muntatge. Però si deixem la imatge bruta, sense talls, sense retocs, això fa que l'entenguem millor? Cal muntar les ombres, posar-les en relació unes amb altres, perquè les imatges revelin tot el seu sentit. És més, el muntatge ens pot fer veure allò que no podem percebre directament. Mirem aquesta escena. Diu que un qiang-yang veu el món d'endarrere cap endavant. És així com veu el món un qiang-yang? El cinema és l'art de les ombres, l'art dels dobles, l'art de crear fantasmes.
El cinema va néixer per representar i duplicar el món, però representant la realitat, el que va fer va ser crear una altra realitat, un altre temps, un temps mític, que acabaria per transformar el primer. El cinema va esdevenir aviat el món dels somnis i la fantasia, però també el reialme de la mort, allà on els morts podien parlar als vius, on les ombres prenien la paraula, com ho fan els Qian-Yang, a través de la paraula dels profetes, dels rituals, de l'escriptura, com ens parlen els morts a nosaltres, en aquesta pel·lícula, a través de les imatges i de les traduccions. Què és una pel·lícula sobre els Qian-Yang? La petjada del nostre encontre amb ells i d'ells amb nosaltres. La traça de la nostra mirada. L'intent de mostrar i de traduir el que no pot ser ni mostrat ni dit. Un pas cap als límits del llenguatge. Un homenatge a les ombres. Un retorn als orígens del cinema. This is a kind of exercise, and with this comment I will then try to wrap up what I've said, because it's 12. I think that this kind of exercise would be very, I mean, of course it has its problems, this film, but it will be very helpful for ethnographic cinema, no? Don't you think so? I mean, if we had something similar for some of the most important films in the history of ethnographic cinema, where we have the author saying, I did this and this, I had this problem, I solved this in this way, these are the images that I decided not to include, these are the problems that I found while, I mean, how useful it would be for our seminars and classrooms and whatever, no? Because we learn a lot, and it's a way also of showing our own weakness as filmmakers and as anthropologists and as human beings. I mean, that we make choices, and that perhaps they are not the best ones, but these are the choices that we've made, because otherwise we wouldn't have a film. And so in this film, I decided to think, okay, let's open myself and just put in words and thoughts all what I had in mind while making this film. Because actually, about filming the spirits, filming the invisible, when we make a film, we are visualizing the spirits. We are making choices that in a way are making them visible in one way or another. For example, using this wind, or making close shots of the face of the possessed person. All these are choices, and it's not clear that they are the best ones. And it has to be said that actually the film is not the reality itself. It's a way of approaching it. It's not even a mode of representation. It's part of the reality that it studies, and it transforms the reality while filming it. Ethnographic cinema is radically performative in this sense. So I think that this kind of reflexivity is important. And for example, when they say a Qian-Yang sees the world backwards. Well, when we, let's take it seriously. Let's take what people say seriously. This is the most important anthropological principle. And then let's use montage and editing. I mean, we have plenty of tools at hand. And then if we put the film in reverse, we can have this idea of how it could be, again the analogy, to see the world from the point of view of the Qian-Yang. So from the point of view of the wind, because for them the ancestor, the spirit and the wind are connected, which is nice as well, as way of thinking, right? And for example, there is, if you want to watch the whole film, there is this divination ritual, no? So called al-samano. So if the spirit says yes, they touch the pumpkin. If the spirit says no, the hand remain quiet. Okay? So this is a way of filming the visible, again, because it's a way of seeing the movement of the spirit, how the spirit make itself visible. But then you have to take it seriously. So you have to subtitle it, because it is a person. So you have to treat this gesture as a character. You see what I mean? So you have to radically adopt the ethical, aesthetic, formal consequences of your ontological stance. And when at the beginning of the talk I said, and I was perhaps not very clear at that moment, I'm sorry for that, that actually in cinema we have to turn a specific ontology into a cinematic language. I was referring to that. That if spirits are talking, what they say and do has to be treated cinematographically as a character. So wind is a character. The pumpkin becomes a mode of communication between us and these spirits. So we have to take it seriously and to go to the ultimate consequences. I have different examples, but it's already midday, so I'll be wrapping it up a little bit, and then we can do some kind of exercise. I would just add a couple of things. Is the first one being that in order to be reflexive, what you can do, but it is not an obligation at all, is that to let people use the camera as well in filming you if they want to. I mean, to be more participative in a way, you know. I will show you, there is so as I was saying at the beginning, I showed the film about Maria Leonza in Venezuela. Then some years later, I got a grant from the Werner Grant Foundation to make a second film about the cult of Maria Leonza in Barcelona, so in my own city. So it was like the second volley of this film. And so it was it was the story of an anthropologist who went to the other part of the world to see something very exotic. And at that period, I think I was some kind in this mood. But then 10 years later, he realized that actually this ritual is being practiced in the corner of his own city. No? And then what does it mean about this initial impulse of the otherness and whatever? So I tried to make a more reflexive film on the act of making films. No? And I decided to put in the film, again in the same vein, all the kind of sequences and images that usually are not visible in the film and ethnographic. For example, in order to film a ritual, I have to be purified myself, or the camera has to be purified very often. So this is interesting in terms of filming the invisible, because filming the invisible, what do we have to do to film the invisible? For example, we have to purify ourselves, and we have to purify the camera, and this is interesting, and this is part of the ritual itself. How do we purify a camera in Afro-American rituals? And for candomblé, it's very similar. So they said, you have two options, rum or tobacco. I said, rum is excluded, of course, because if you pour rum on the camera, I mean, there's no film. Do what you want with tobacco, but at a certain distance, if possible. So it was with tobacco, with the smoke, and you see that actually the smoke of the tobacco is like the wind. So we are again in this element that has a kind of porous, ephemeral existence, and it goes up. Anyway, in this film, I showed myself being purified. I showed what I had to do to film a ritual. So as it was a film made in my city don't belong to anyone, but you know what I mean. So I decided let's be radically reflexive in this sense. No? So for example, one of the things that I did, and this is again about filming the spirit, like not in the ways of visualization or what we understand as a spirit of the invisible, but what filming this the invisible implies. So here, for example, there's a moment in which, well, there's a moment in which I am in the shower, taking a shower, and I'm being purified. You can watch it. But here, for example, you will see a moment, it's very brief, and perhaps it's too philosophical, but anyway, in which they propose to get the camera, to take the camera, and to film me while asking to an author if I could film. So you say, okay, let's be careful with the camera. That's the first thing. And then, so you give the camera and they film you. So this is, I think, interesting in current anthropology, because it shows that actually we are in a negotiation. And we are not, or we should not impose. I mean, I am aware that I'm a European white man. I know that. And that I've been in countries where this has a certain position of privilege. Okay? But then when we film a ritual, I think it's fair to show how the relationship, the terms of the relationship, are being negotiated. Because it is a way of showing that actually we are not just there saying, act naturally, I'm going to make a film, and I'm going to win festivals with it, or not, but of saying, okay, we are engaging a conversation that will lead to a kind of mutual understanding, or not, because it may fail. But we are building up, shaping something all together. You see what I mean? So in this moment, he is asking permission to the spirit of the dead. This is not Maria Leonza, this is Palo Mayombe. Perhaps some of you know Palo. They work with the bones of deceased people. Again, the importance of mirrors, which is very important in all Afro-American religions and beyond. And then you will see very briefly an anthropologist praying. And how many anthropologists working on religion have had to pray or to do a kind of as if?
Llega donde tienen que llegar.
Y el muerto te dice cómo hay que ser para él.
Ya está conmigo. Para lo que yo quiera, ese señor conmigo y yo con él. Y tengo varios. Tengo uno que en vida me donó parte de algo que perdió. En vida, era mi amigo, era un colega.
¿Y te lo trajiste del otro lado del Atlántico? ¿Y te lo dejaron pasar en el aeropuerto con la maleta?
Sin problema. Ellos se le preguntan cómo va, qué día, qué cuándo, y te dicen...
He's explaining how to bring a bone of a deceased person from America to Europe without being detected. So the spirit gives you the clues to do this. He's not explaining the clues.
Cuándo, cómo y dónde, y aterrizan y llegan donde tienen que llegar.
Y el muerto te dice cómo hay que ser para él, para hacer el traslado.
Todo.
Y funciona.
Míralo ahí.
Ahí está.
Se sacrifican animales, evidentemente, de 2 patas, de pluma, 4 patas, chivo, gallo, paloma, según qué ritual, qué cosa va a utilizar.
Mesos després d'aquesta entrevista, l'Enzo em va proposar d'assistir a un ritual de Palo Mayombe a casa seva, en honor a un ahijado seu. Abans de començar el ritual, però, em va demanar que m'adrecés a l'altar, explicant interiorment els objectius de la meva recerca i prometent-li no fer més indegut de les imatges que n'obtingués. Un dels assistents del ritual va agafar la càmera i va començar a filmar. I per ser honest, en moments com aquest, quan em trobo sol, agenollat, parlant amb mi mateix, confrontat a un altar que prové d'un món completament estrany per mi, em sorgeix sempre la mateixa pregunta. Què estic fent? A qui m'adreço? Quin és el sentit dels meus actes? Què significa creure?
¿Cuál es el objetivo del ritual que van a hacer luego?
Porque hay un ahijado que viene como a rendir tributo y a dar conocimiento de que hace 2 años de haber hecho el parto.
So here you see Maria Leonza up there, a Viking, some Catholic images and photograph of deceased people, and then the altar. So in here, so you can, of course, be participative in many different ways. This is not an obligation to be yourself in the film. It is a possibility that you can do. But during a long time in ethnographic cinema, the filmmaker was totally absent. Was the one that was always there but never seen. In terms of being seen and not seen, it was like like a ghost, talking about the invisible, that filmed without being seen. And the film tried to hide the interactions between the person filmed and those being filmed. And I'm increasingly in favor of being more explicit, of showing this relationship, because it helps you to understand what the invisible mean in a way, and how this relationship is practiced and done. It's not an obligation. I mean, you don't have to search for mirror somewhere to show yourself with the camera in your hands. There's a lot of ways of doing this. And this is just one. But letting others filming you, entering into a kind of dialogical exchange of images between you and them, crossing looks between you and them and others and an audience is much more interesting than just saying in a film there is one point of view which is mine and which is the point of view of science and which is the true and the only and the best one. You see? It's much more dialogical. So it has to do with filming the invisible again, because it shows what you have to do to put the images, to put the invisible in images. Okay? I think that I will finish the film. I mean, I have other films about religion and other films about other topics which are not religion. But what I would like to do to finish, again on Maria Lionza, is that when you finish a film, the film, I mean, by showing the film to other people and to the people who appeared in the film itself, and it's a way of turning the film into a research device again. And this is very important. And because, for example, a possessed person, technically speaking, the person is not there in a way, or not fully there during the ceremony, okay? But then afterwards, if you show the image to the person and you ask this person to talk about the image, there's a kind of knowledge that can come up through this interaction of video elicitation. You see what I mean? So don't think that the film ends when the editing is finished, because the social life of images is a way of improving, of increasing the research itself. So you come back with the film, you show it to people, you show it to an audience like you, is a way of giving this film a life. This is why it is difficult to refuse seminars like this. And it's a way of representing or filming the invisible again, because you spark these imaginations into new audience. I'm curious to see, for example, how you have seen these images, because some of you are another generation, another background. So you see that actually images produce images. Acts of imagination spark new acts of imagination. And just one last word about this multimodal approach that I was saying here. I think that it's, once upon a time there were these visual anthropologists as opposed to non-visual anthropologists. This is not very useful for understanding today visual research. I mean, we do write and it's great. We can make films, we can make exhibitions in collaboration with artists or other people. We can do something more for a wide audience and articles specialized for a specific journals. All this is great. So this plurality of outcomes and plurality of methods is very important. So for example, for Maria Lionza, we made an exhibition that you are seeing there, and there is a visited visit with English subtitles, in which you could, which we put films and articles and statues, and local communities practicing this cult in Barcelona attended the exhibition, and it gave me the possibility of knowing more things about this religious practice, also to let them speak about it. So think that, I mean, what you do with the film, I wanted to say, is part of the film project itself. And it's part of the research itself. And you can combine it with different outcomes and creating some kind of research devices as an exhibition that actually what we'll do is to feed the research and to give it a new life. So, conclusion, if there is a conclusion. Well, the invisible is not an unreachable domain. It's not simply what cannot be seen. It's what can be seen or visualized, but through specific strategies, situations, and techniques. Usually, we don't see directly the invisible. We see the effects of the invisible on things. As for example, the wind acts on the body. But we can use techniques also to make it visible or to visualize it. And it can be drawings, for example, but also techniques as, for example, this color mode of the touch that actually invited us to imagine what a living image might be, which actually is something that we do all the time, because if we look at an image of our grandmother who passed away, when we look at it, in a way, it becomes a living image, isn't right? So actually, it's mostly what happened with this experience in Puerto Rico. And then think that what we film is not, as the film was saying, a reality in itself, but a reality that is being constructed or shaped while filming it. And that the way we approach it and the visual aesthetic techniques that we use need to be inspired by the, let's say, inner ontology or features of the people with whom we work, and that cinema must be this kind of openness to the unknown, and that led us perhaps not to film the invisible, but to prompt people to imagine what cannot be directly seen. Thank you. So all these films are online, and I'm very grateful for your patience, and I hope it was interesting for you all. And so what we could do is, because I was too long and planned, it's always the same problem, sorry, is just to make a break of 5 minutes, and then we can try to think all together a kind of couple of exercises till 1, and then I think it will be enough, but you are totally free to contact me whenever you wish, if I can be of any help. Thank you. So 5 minutes break. But first, I don't know if you have any comments or questions related to the previous talk, because before we go on, I'll try to be very brief in responding, if you have questions.
When you start using camera after you arrive in a field?
Sorry?
Would be a question.
That's a very good question. When do we use a camera when we arrive on the field? Again, there's no general response for that. But to make it, I mean, traditionally there were like 2 positions, no? The first position is you are homo filmicus, and you film. So from the very beginning you have to show yourself with the camera, and you have to film that from the very beginning. I mean, you don't hide your notebook the first day you arrive on a place, so you can film and use the camera from the very first day. This is it's a way of saying this is my way of being in the world and of being with you and of doing ethnography. And another position would be the other extreme. It's like you build a relationship of trust, of intimacy, when you can, because I mean, if you're filming a demonstration in the streets, you can't create this kind of situation. If you're doing ethnography of a metro, you can't create this kind of thing. But let's imagine that you are in a kind of more or less small community, so you can build up this connection, and then when you have this connection, you use the camera. I wouldn't recommend either one or the other. I think I usually do a kind of middle point between two, which is I talk about the camera from the very beginning, I show the camera from the very beginning, but I don't film from the very beginning unless it is very necessary. So when I am just starting to know someone, I would take my camera and just leave it there to talk about the fact that I want to film, that I want to do a film or research through cinema. I show the camera, we can use it, but it's not, you don't need to have this anxiety of filming from the first day and filming everything. It's important to explain what the camera is for. Because when you talk about camera and about cinema and about films, there is a certain imagination connected to it. That you want to make a movie, that it's going to be broadcasted and will be screened in television and whatever. And sometimes when you have the camera but you don't film from the very beginning, people are rather surprised. No, because it's a way of showing that actually you are not in a rush, that you want to do something deeper. And what I do also is to try to imagine situations to make the camera more familiar to people. So for example, I have filmed birthdays, weddings, and events, and it's not like a strategy for me just to gain confidence or whatever. It's a way also of testing how the camera is seen and improved in a certain group. So, you see what I mean? So my position would be, you have your camera with you from the very beginning. Sometimes you can just say that you have this camera, but don't film from the very beginning unless it is very important. I mean, if you are there and there is a ritual which takes place just once per year, I mean, you won't wait for a year. So now, in this case, you have to film, okay? But if you can first show that the camera is an aspect of a broader research, that it is an aspect of something which goes beyond the film itself, which is research, ethnology, learning about each other. It's richer. I don't know if that has been useful for you. So it's not a waste of time of carrying the camera and put it on the table and having a chat and doing nothing with it. It's not a loss of time. Or filming something and then show it to people, or it's important to make the camera more familiar.
But what about in context, like in communities that are used to having journalists and going around and doing these like short documentaries, perhaps for these Reuters and stuff, where they used to having journalists going around just filming in a very different way from an anthropologist. How do you deal with these kind of expectations, ideas? How do you explain the differences and the presence of the camera that is quite different from the camera of a journalist?
This again has changed a lot because, I mean, when you talk about the camera and film, sometimes they identify you as a journalist, and there can be a certain mistrust because some communities are quite fed up with people coming, making images, going away, and not receiving any news from them, and then what is the benefit for them? This is what I think that it is important to put research in front of our relationship with others, to say that Actually, you are not here for a short period, just trying to get good images that you can export, but you are interested in knowing something about them, and the camera is part of this process, and that it's part of this process in very different ways. Not only the film, because if you concentrate everything on the film, you would create this expectation of the big movie. But if you take it more multimodal, in the sense that you will make photographs, that we can film things that are important for them, of course you're going to make a film, but that you can do more things with it, then you, in a way, you can be, you can create a kind of distinction for different from other ways of using the camera. And it's rather puzzling for people to have a camera and not to use it. I mean, when you have the camera and you just have the camera and you are not using it, or you are using it very, very precise moments without this stress, anxiety for having images very, very quickly. Of course, it depends on the time. If you have 10 days only, well, it's rather difficult, and every day counts. Well, I can understand. I have felt this anxiety as well. And then you are waiting for the ritual, and that day it rains. I mean, again, in writing it's different, because it won't rain in your room at home. And you can even describe a ritual that took place in a rainy day as a ritual that took place in a sunny day. And it's very curious that images have been attacked of lying, of being betrayal, whatever, and it makes sense. But actually it's much more easy to lie when you write rather than when you use images. I mean, writing is very easy to lie when you write. You say, and I found the farmer and I asked him, what's the name of your God? And he said, is this. Who can verify this? It's very difficult. If you want to put it in images, at least you have to find the farmer. It has to agree in taking part of the game. See what I mean? So, but to come back to the camera and how to introduce it, I think that this kind of long durée with the camera and the idea of entering into an exchanging of images, that what you show what you film, you let them film you, you film them, and you enter into this kind of cinematic relationship is a good way of doing things.
But also I think that the way the camera enters a ritual today is different from 20 years ago, because there is a presence of multiple devices in rituals, something which was it's quite unexpected. Like 20 years ago, I would go in the temple of the Valle d'Omagneser and bring my camera, I had to ask permission, I couldn't access several spaces, I couldn't focus on mediums, and nowadays even mediums bring their own mobile phones and film their own rituals and post it on Instagram, on Facebook. So this has changed also the way the camera, the ethnographic camera, enters the ritual space.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, the regimes of visibility of certain rituals have changed. At the very beginning, when I started filming these rituals, I had to ask for permission, and in some cases you still have to do so. But I was the only one filming them, and now they have their own cameras and they film, and this is why I set up this participatory website where people could send me images from their own rituals and altars, and they have to sign an approval, and I uploaded them, because it's a way of doing research as well. So and sometimes now it's difficult to in a way compete between with others that are also filming the ritual. This is where it is very important to define yourself, what you want to do with that. It's not just filming, because everyone is filming. It's making something out of it. And this is the big difference. Because we do film with our cell phones, our friends, in a party or whatever. Who edits this to make a film? We go a weekend in Barcelona, you make 800 photographs. But who edits them and turn them into a photographic essay? So the thing is not making images anymore. It's what we do with the images that we make. And this is exactly what you have to convey to people. I'm going to make images because I would like to make this. And this outcome, I will share it with you. And we can make different outcomes, because another important thing is that sometimes we can do films that are not what people expect from us. And this is an ethical, an epistemological problem, because we don't do research about people. The people are not objects of inquiry. We do research with them. That's great. But do we do research for them in the sense that it's exactly what they expect? I mean, we can have opinions that are different from the opinions of people with whom we work. And actually, most of the times, it hasn't been the case for me, but in this case, it's important to make it clear from the very beginning your kind of autonomy as researcher, that you are going to do something that is for research. So it will be your point of view. But it can lead to other things. For example, some of the rituals that I've made, I made editings that are just like a recording of the ritual without this voiceover and without and it is just for the people who took part in it. It obliges you to do more work, but it's a way of showing that out of the same set of images we can make different outcomes. One of these is research, and it's important, and it has to keep its autonomy, research. But you can do other things with it. I mean, the photographs, you can edit them, and then you print them, and you return them to people. Or, I mean, sometimes they have even political claims, and they ask you, could you film me saying that I don't agree in the fact that my neighbor is too dirty? Okay, you do this, and it's for them, it's not for you. You see what I mean? So this kind of plurality of outcomes out of the same amount of images is important. Because it is a way also of saying, I'm not just here to make a film and to win a festival. I'm here to make research, to do research. Our research is about creating this relationship of mutual understanding between you and the other people.
I had a question, like, have you ever seen them change their behavior in front of the camera? Like, for example, during a ritual, maybe they become more performative or stuff like that, or they just keep doing what they were doing before? Like, that's something that really...
Well, this is an important question, perhaps the question. It's a matter of levels. You can say that it's absolutely true, absolutely false. I mean, when you speak to me right now here, are you your real self, or are you a kind of artificial self? It's a little bit of each, no? Probably if you knew me better, or if you were among your friends, you would act differently. But in a way, you are like this as well. You have this way of looking at people, this way of talking, but well, your body expresses that you're not totally comfortable. We don't know each other very well. We're in a very formal place. Does it mean that you are not true? No, it's that you accommodate to this situation. So when we film, of course, there's this idea of accommodation. People, and then it's a matter of intensities. Of course, if you have a close relationship with people, if you have filmed them a lot of times, you can, in a way, grasp some kind of ordinary life. But the camera always transforms the reality it films in one way or another, in one level or another. And there's nothing wrong with it. Actually, what is interesting with the camera is that it helps us to see aspects of reality that we couldn't see otherwise, because they are cinematic. And it doesn't mean that they are less interesting. So, for example, I'm sure this is why it is important for ethnographic cinema to be reflexive, not to give the impression of that the camera is not there, but to make it explicit that actually a camera was there, a filmmaker was there. Actually, an anthropologist transforms the reality as well. So having a camera is just adding one more layer to the ethnographic situation, which is something rather artificial, because we usually go to places where we haven't been invited to go, and we just introduce ourselves there. I want to do this and this and this. Wow, okay. So necessarily people change in one way or another because we change ourselves. We don't introduce ourselves in the same way when we do ethnographic fieldwork in a place than when we introduce ourselves to a friend of us in a party where there's a lot of people. So we do change as well, and it doesn't mean that it's less true. So yes, I have had the impression that because of the camera, some people changed or modified their behavior to make it cinematic. It doesn't mean that it's false. It just means that they have intensified or highlighted some aspects of the ritual that would be there anyway because of the camera. And this is, I would say, is one of the interests of the camera, that it let us see something that we couldn't see otherwise. So for example, the Balanta. I have the impression that the spectacularity of the ritual was enhanced because we were there. And probably. Or the medium at the beginning, he starts saying, well, what's your name? I'm Roger Canals. Oh, this is a Catalan name. Well, I was living with them. I was living in the same house. I was in them for a month or something like that. So, and it's very interesting because it's why, I mean, of course this is a cinematic game. It is a play in a way. And I was always asking people, what's your name, what do you do in your life? And now during the ritual, when he's possessed, he's the one saying, oh, what's your name, what do you do? Ah, you're an anthropologist, ah, you're a Catalan, okay. But this is interesting because it's different, because it's cinematic. It doesn't mean that because it is cinematic, it is less interesting ethnographically speaking. It's the other way around, because it let us see something different. In this case, it let us see how they adopt the position of the anthropologists during the ritual, reversing the relationship that we... That is one of possible explanation, and not an ending one, of course. But this is a potential explanation of the situation. And for example, if they act in the ritual in a different way, that gives you an idea of what a ritual is, or what a possession ritual is. That in some way, the first question of the Congress is a possessed person in trance? Well, there is intentionality as well. You can be possessed and keep your individual agency and intentionality. It's a matter of degree again. It's not just black or white, you see.
Also a request. It's a bit difficult for me to formulate this question. For me, I tried. Thanks so much, Roger, for you gave us so many ideas, and thanks so much. Actually, sometimes I find myself having to make a choice in between filming or not filming a ritual, because, as you said, when we film, we are making a choice every time, on the moment. Also when we edit, but also in the moment of filming. And instead, I have the impression that when I'm not filming, this choice, I can make it later when I write about it. I mean, in the sense that my experience is more fully there, I'm participating, I'm not even taking notes, I'm there in a ritual. So I'm just there, I experience. And I don't know, I'm difficult to ask this question, I don't know if you grasp it. So I don't know how to solve this problem sometimes, because I would like to film, but also I would like to be there without camera and just experience, so that I can be closer to their experience. Maybe I can understand something to my body, feeling of being there, and instead with the camera, I feel that I have to make the choice while filming, and this doesn't allow me to feel.
Absolutely. Well, the first response is that I'm not saying that you have to film everything and everywhere and at any time. I mean, it's just a possibility that we have. We can use it or not. We can use drawing or whatever. Then I don't think that because you're not filming, you're not making choices. You are always making choices. And if there's a ritual and you stay back in a corner, it is a choice. If they say, in order to attend to this ritual, you have to drink this, and you don't know what it is, and you decide to take the risk, it is a choice. So you're taking choices all the time. There's no a more neutral way of being a ritual or any social event than others. And against the idea that the ritual, that the filming doesn't allow you to have a more holistic experience, I would say that it is sometimes the other way around. I think that this cinematic experience permits to enhance your experience of the ritual. First, for example, if you use headphones, you hear the ritual differently. And if you have, for example, lavaliers on different people, you can hear people who's not just next to you, but far away. Okay? But then, and this is something that Jean Rouge said, 50, 60, 70 years ago, the fact of holding a camera permits you to move in a way which is absolutely different than the way you would move otherwise. I have realized that for people, it is very suspect what anthropologists do during rituals if you keep a distance and you have your notebook and you write notes. What are you doing and what for? But everyone knows what a camera is today and what filming is today. So it's a very easy way to justify in a way your presence, in a way to say I'm filming. Not only because I want to make a film, because I like images, because the ritual is creative, because with my camera I can grasp your movements and whatever. So it's a very easy way of explaining what you're doing there. And again, not only at the sonic level, we were talking about sound, but also in terms of movement. If you don't have a camera, and for example, you stay very close to someone, it's uncomfortable. Yeah? But if you have a camera, and that people agree with that, they let you move in a way that you couldn't do without a camera. So if you say, okay, Roger, you can film me, you will understand that sometimes I will have to be here. And I can stay here with a camera, but I can't stay here without a camera. She would complain, and she would be right. And for example, you're in a conference. Emily is giving a conference. Huh? Okay, you're giving a conference. And I'm not having a camera. Can I stay here? No, I would say, excuse me, can you move? But if you agree in the fact that I have to make a film, and I explained, I'm sorry, at some times, I'll try not to, to be an obstacle for you, but at some times, because of the film, I will have to be in the middle of the room, and you say, okay, we understand because he has to film. Then you will allow me to stay here. And I will have a shot that is a point of view, that is an experience that I wouldn't have without the cinematic device and without the approval of people. And again, imagine that I want to make a kind of panoramic shot, no? That I start here and I go here. And then without a camera, what is he doing? This guy is possessed by his spirit. But with the camera, I can't do this. So I can move differently because your way of being in a place is modified because of the cinematic situation. And in this sense, having a camera, at least for me, permits me to participate in the ritual in a more active and engaged way, and at the same time proving that I'm not like believers themselves. If there's a ritual and everyone is taking part into a dance, I can dance myself with the camera. Camera is when you film, you become the shadow of people that you film because you follow them. So I dance as well, but it's a different dance. So I don't need to pretend to do the same as others. You see what I mean? But I can do something very similar, thanks to the camera, but which is not exactly the same. and which gives me a particular identity as a researcher using a camera. And this is a very interesting way of engaging into a ritual. Did I respond to your question? There was a question over there at the end, and then you,
Yeah.
Cecilia.
Thank you so much. It was really also for those of us who do not work with film, even though I think by now we are all convinced that we have to start.
It was not my intention to convince anyone.
But it was really stimulating, and it made me think a lot about ethnography, both as the research moment and the writing process. So many things that you said about reflexivity, the choices we make, I think, have to do with writing too. So I will have many questions, and especially what you said today made me think about my participation to the possession moment I was talking about yesterday with Fadila, etc. But there is no time for that. The two questions are about reflexivity. So how do you deal in writing, for example, there is this tension between the risk of talking too much about ourselves and talking more about ourselves than the people we work with. So how do you deal with this tension? And it seemed to me that maybe you try to produce different products, different films to talk about yourself and others, but I wanted to ask you this. And the second thing is about what Serena too was talking about, the importance of the choices we make. And I found in the last couple of years, I found this concept of ethnographic refusal very, very stimulating. Audra Simpson idea of refusal, when people refuse to do something with us, but also what we refuse to do, for example, what we refuse to talk about in our ethnographies, etc. And this is difficult maybe to show in movies, because if you refuse, you refuse. So, but I think it's very important to actually put refusal in the picture, so I wanted to ask you if you have any ideas about this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I will start by the second one. I showed a sequence of a film filmed in Venezuela in which a person says, "You can't film this." So he looks at the camera, she looks at the camera, and he says, "This cannot be filmed." And then I put a black screen, and then the ritual continues. I think that these moments are particularly important. So I think that refusals, prohibitions, if you're allowed to include them in the film, I would go for it, because they show how the ethnographic relationship is a negotiation which has to do with the regimes of visibility, what can be seen and what has to remain unseen, and that actually you're not just there filming a reality, you're negotiating what reality you can depict and how into a mutual agreement. And this is very important. And if you can't film something, and that is a refusal, and that you say you can't film this, again, this is very good in terms of the imagination, because it lets you, it's like, how many stories there are about a house with a room in which you can't enter. And the whole film is about trying to get into there, because there's nothing more appealing rather than a prohibition, of course. And you say, you can't enter into this room, of course I want to enter into that room. And your imagination, what is the content of this room, what it's inside. So if you say you can't film this, or this is an aspect of the ritual that cannot be seen, try to find cinematic ways of suggesting this. Can be black screen, but it can be through sound, but it can be just these words and then a long shot. Use the capacity of a spectator to imagine what is not directly visible, to make it visible into their own imagination. But I adore films about films. All films are about films, as all writings are about language, about what we can say through language. The difference is that some books acknowledge the problem of writing, while others simply use writing as a given device, technology, capacity, knowledge, or whatever. But I think that we have to problematize the medium when we're doing anthropology, because anthropology is about writing about something that you don't know, about something that is beyond your usual domain of reality. So the way we talk about that, the way we represent this visually, the way we imagine it is a problem. It's never a given thing. And then there's a question about reflexivity. I mean, there was a trend in reflexivity in which in all ethnographic films you had to see the filmmaker with a camera. So young filmmakers were trying to find mirrors somewhere because at least there had to be one shot with you with a camera in your hands. And I don't think that ethnographic cinema has a style. I think that the style, if it exists, has to be a response of the inner features of the place where you work. So I would say if this reflexive exercise allows us to better understand the topic of the film, then I would include it. I mean, for example, in this case, I was not allowed to film the first part of the ritual because Maria Leonza, when she's an Indian, is too young and she cannot allow to be filmed. Well, this is interesting. It permits us to better understand this ritual. Or the cinematic essay that I show, the wind and words, no? So that is very reflexive. It helps us to understand what the yin and yang is. Then, if it's not important, I mean, if you start a film saying, I'm 24 years old, I'm going there with my anxieties, 3 days ago my boyfriend left me and blah, 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 blah. I mean, does it help us to better understand this ritual? No, so please, I mean, we all have problems, all right? It's not necessary to include it. I mean, reflexivity is not auto-ethnography. Reflexivity is to make it explicit the conditions of the production of the film itself. If the conditions can be deducted from the image itself, but I think it's not necessary to verbalize. But for example, if you pay people for being in the film, which is sometimes the case, well, it can be good in a way, but it could be interesting also, if possible, to make it explicit, no? Because, well, this changes reality. Or if people are, for example, doing a ritual that they don't perform anymore, but because you are there, they say, I'm going to make a ritual that my grandfather used to do, but actually we don't perform it anymore because, I mean, we are not like them, but because you are here, I'm going to do it. This is absolutely fine. I mean, there's no problem about that. I mean, in my room, I mean, when we have guests, we clean the room very much, and it's because they are there. You see what I mean? And it doesn't mean that it's not true. But then it's good to say it. It's good to say in the film, because we were there, they decided to do something that they never do. Because in this case, it helps us to understand the ritual. So reflexivity is always, if it helps us to understand research in a better way, in a deeper way. But it has to be justified. Otherwise, it can turn into a kind of narcissism. And you had a question?
Yes, short question.
I'm sorry for the long answer.
No. It's quite technically a question. Based on your experience, do you think that there are cameras more adapted, rather no, in order to negotiate the relationship? For example, maybe some phones has a beautiful camera talking about resolution, but it's different also to stay with a phone that is not clearly a camera, or maybe it looks like not really professional because each tourist can use a phone to take selfies. So, but maybe some small cameras are more useful because are less invasive in the context. So one big camera is more professional. People may looks like that you are really professional worker, so
We
they
are.
take in serious.
Professional anthropology.
Exactly, and they take you in serious. But maybe they perform more as an actor. So
I don't have suitable response to that. I think it depends a lot on the research. It has its pros and cons. For example, if you work with, now there are mobile phones that are extremely good. So we have very beautiful images. You can add an external microphone, not like, smaller than this, but more or less this kind of microphone, and you can get your images. But first, not as good as some cameras, which have, for example, a very high ISO that let you film in situations of darkness without using torches, and this is great. Then the focus is different sometimes with these cell phones. You have everything on focus, but it's beautiful to play in focus to enhance some objects and some aspects and that. So there are things that you can't do. But the thing with, for example, a cell phone is that you may have a good image, but as you were saying, it's something that everyone does. So in a way you fade into the multitude. It is good because you can have a kind of anonymity, but at the same time, it's good also to reivindicate your position as researcher. And sometimes it requires some materiality, the way you actually. And it has been theorized in anthropology, I think, on an article by Discussant, that the notebook and the writing as a physical object had a symbolic importance. Huh? So the same goes for the camera. So, but at the same time, it's true that the big camera that you have to put on your shoulder may be very invasive. It can be identified as you are making a journalistic approach and difficult to handle. For example, when you follow a ritual like the Valentine ritual, 40 degrees, 6 hours, Guinea-Bissau, midday. Well, first, it's very physical. Filming is very physical, so you have to make a kind of cinematic exercises to be in good shape. But if it's very big, it becomes difficult. I think that, again, easy response, the middle point is to use cameras more or less like this, or a little bit bigger, as the one we have in the project VisualTrust right now, which is a Sony. That in a way are good. When you put a microphone on it, it shows that it's something a bit different, but at the same time, or this one, for example, but at the same time, you can put it on your back, and there are tourists that have cameras which are more or less like this, and this is a camera that you can use on a tripod, but also that you can have in your hands, and the flip screen is good, not only because you can film like this and look at what you're filming, or just like this, but also because you can share what you film with the people. You can do some video elicitation while doing this. So for example, sometimes I start filming and I just show what I filmed, and this is the way I am filming. What do you think? Is it good or bad? Is this a good way of filming things? Can I film the altar like this? I do 2-3 shots and I ask people, okay, this is great, or not, this is not fine. So this is something which is very good. You can do it with your cell phones again, but with the camera, I think it's, if possible, I would take a kind of middle camera like this. I think it's the perfect device. Unless you want to do something more participatory, because, for example, you can ask, I was in a research in Barcelona, nothing to do with religion, and we asked a group of young people to make with their cell phones 5 photographs of the 5 most important spots or places in their life, if they wanted to. So this is something that, of course, you can't do with this. It's not necessary that you can use their cell phones. It's an interesting activity as well.
We have time still?
It's 1.
1:15. Do we have to?
For a question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Then we can do something.
Thank you. Like Cecilia, it's like my mind is going everywhere. I am not a visual anthropologist, but you know, I film all the time and I photograph all the time, but I actually like to really do this kind of production with it that much. First, I think because I feel very incompetent, you know, and it's like the technical way, but also for different reasons. But I was thinking of like the use of cell phones. You know, I'm going to try to tie two different things because I quite like your conversation about how using film as a research tool or a research medium, you know, which I think maybe that's why I film and photograph so much, but I'm not actually using them as publications or products. But the use of cell phone, I was thinking of what Emily was talking to, at least in my context of fieldwork, I encounter the cell phone all the time. And people are filming themselves with their cell phone, not just from the outside, they're filming. And it made me use my cell phone to film because I wanted to see what they were saying. Of course, not exactly the same thing, you know, but it made me aware of, we were talking about it yesterday, made me aware of something like they film with a cell phone so that they can share on WhatsApp. So they cut the ritual in the time frame of what WhatsApp allows them to share. You know, so it was very interesting to think of how their view, their use of visual technology was being negotiated with their own regimes of visibility. You know, and then I realized that I had been filming much longer films with my cell phone, but not on WhatsApp. No, I was storing it and on my camera. And what I wanted to film was of the beginning, the whole time somebody was in trance, and then when the entity left, I wanted to see the beginning and the end. And I couldn't, that's too long, you can't share it on WhatsApp. So I realized that what they were filming was the best moment, you know, when the people were in full possession, they were dancing, they're bad at dance. So it was, for me, it was like looking at these different ways in which they were using filming and I was using film, made me think of like, what are they looking for to share? You know, and just that's one commentary. And the other one was that when I was doing the longer films and then I was looking at my own image, I realized that I was looking for the beginning, for the end, and I wasn't really, I think it has to do with the question of like being filled with camera or without the camera. Being with the camera, I wasn't really looking at what was going outside, like right at the border, right at the edge of what I was framing. And then when I looked at home, I could see it. And I realized that a couple of the entities were doing exactly the same thing I was doing. They were looking for the signs of our coming incorporation so that they could act and help. And it was really, that was like, to me, it was fascinating that the ethnographer and the entities were looking for the same thing. You know, of course, I'm not an entity, but, and they were looking for it with different intentions, but it was like, it was this, kind of mimicking their use of the cell phone allowed me to do something as an anthropologist perceives their way of viewing that had nothing to do with technology. I don't know if I make myself clear, but absolutely. I was thinking of like
because I mean the materiality, the technology of the camera itself allow us to see in one way or another. I mean, you see differently through a cell phone or through a camera like this. And so in a way, when you use the cell phone as the rest of the participants in this ritual, you are entering into a kind of visual conversation with the others, seeing the way they see, sharing. But then I would say it would be good I mean, a ritual is seen and experienced differently by different participants. As a conference like this, I mean, I don't understand that you are said there as different. But then if we can get these images, for example, and that in the editing room you can combine your way of viewing the ritual and the images taken by some of the participants themselves, and you can show the ritual as a kind of crossing of different ways of looking, and even filming from the perspective, why not, of spirits or of images or whatever, then you can evoke this idea of this plurality of gazes crossing each other in a ritual. And this is absolutely fine with, for ethnographic research. Absolutely. And this has to do with sound is very important as well. We were talking about sound has been forgotten. So when you film, you have to think on sound as well. If you have a separated sound recorder, it is important to have long sound takes that then will permit you to film and to edit. Because you have to give a sense of continuity. And it's important, for example, to record the silence, because there's never two silence. I mean, silence change from one place to another. But the problem sometimes is that you do very short shots, and then you don't have long takes of sound to create a sense of continuity within a same sequence. You see what I mean? Sometimes if you don't have an external recorder, it is important to make long shots just to have the sound, which will give you the possibility of creating a sound environment that unifies a sequence. So before concluding, I think that you could just, it won't take long because I imagine that you start to be tired, but could you, just 2 minutes, imagine the using of a camera in your research and a potential situation by anticipating it that you may encounter that can be either very crucial or potentially difficult, and so that we can discuss about how we could film this situation in a given point. For example, one difficult thing is that you are following someone in daylight, and this person enters into a room which is dark. Then the camera gets crazy. If you have it in automatic, it gets crazy. If you have it in manual, it's very difficult to readapt. So this is something that you can anticipate a little bit. Okay? So cinema is about anticipation. So it's important to anticipate a little bit what's going to happen. Because you know that if you are entering there, you will have to change the diaphragm, you will have to change the ISO, or how you will do this, or if you have an external filter, you'll have to remove it. Well, it's not that easy. Perhaps in this case, it's better to put it in automatic and to leave the camera recalculate the whole thing, and then you see what I mean? So I would say just 2 minutes, think, comment on your colleagues, what you could do with the camera in a situation that you can expect that it's going to happen, and then we can just discuss it a little bit about this and recreate it if you wish, and then we can close the session if it's fine. Okay? Just a couple of minutes. Think about it. Discuss it with your friend. Yeah. Raduleza, do you want to share some of the thoughts or ideas that you have had with your colleagues?
So we were discussing, like I have a practical example. I went to do some research in Glastonbury, and I participated in a ceremony. And I was there wondering, how can I take part to the ceremony and film this? Because they were like in a circle. They were all near one another. And the ceremony itself was taking part in the center. But I am pretty short. I don't have very long arms. And it was very difficult for me to film what was happening. So like the things I filmed are not very high quality. I tried to go like higher, but I thought like I'm not participating enough. So like I want to take part in this. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I wasn't understanding how could I film, take pictures while taking part in the ritual, because I was thinking while I film, I'm like losing a lot of stuff because I'm concentrating in how to do that. At a certain point I was like, okay, I'm throwing the camera away and I'm just participating because I don't really know how to like relate to that. And apart from that, there's also, I think, the difficult part is how to enter in like empathy with the people there, because many times if you're not very capable, they see you as a threat or maybe as a disturbing element, And since it was my first time, I think that sometimes they were like thinking, what are you doing? Why are you filming us? Even if I was like always asking, can I do that? Can I do that? Can I take a picture? But they were not like very accommodating. Now, I don't know if it is like just something regarding that particular cult, that particular culture. Okay, professor is saying yes, maybe that's the point. But they were not like very keen to let me film, to let me take part in what they were doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can film, sometimes you cannot. I mean, you have to accept it. But, I don't have a response for all situations. And things evolve. I mean, at the beginning, you will have a kind of relationship, but this can evolve over the time. What is important is that you has to be familiar. You need to be familiar with the equipment before filming. If they say that you are uncomfortable with it, that you are searching for the button, that you don't know exactly how to do, this gives a sense of insecurity that will go against you. Then, the problem with this, with the cinema is that we have to anticipate. We can't film everything. So if you don't want, if you can't make choices, you are stressed because you want to film everything, but you can't film everything. So what do you need for filming? So in this case, you said that there were a circle of people and something in the middle, and that you were part of it. Well, I can, if you visualize this thing, I mean, you are like in a circle in here, no? So I don't know if the ritual was exactly this way, no? But you said, I'm not very tall. You will probably need a general shot, a kind of setting shot of the whole thing, okay? This gives you the idea of the general choreography of the ritual. General shots depend on the kind of optics that you have. If you have a wider optical, it's easier. But probably you will need to be in a place which is somehow higher. If you're not very tall, you have to climb or to put yourself on a chair or whatever. So you have to anticipate it. And perhaps trying to see where you can locate yourself to have this general shot. But then, if there's a circle, it does mean that I'm imagining that you will have to be within the circle, looking at people. So you have to position yourself in the middle. And for example, having middle shots of people, but also close shots, because it's very important in the ritual not to give a kind of the sense that the ritual means the same thing for everyone. There was a time where rituals were filmed with long sequence shots, which were very wide. This worked well from a kind of functionalist approach, or that the thing is that it's like a kind of general. But actually people feel, have different ways of being in the ritual according to each one. So short shots of some people will give you the sense that the ritual is experienced differently by the participants. And then if there's something important in the middle, well, there is a rule that if there is an interaction between one person and a thing, you need at least 3 shots. 1 shot of the thing, 1 shot of the person, and 1 shot of both. So I would probably try to have at least 1 shot coming from the center and going to people, just to give a sense that there is a union between them. A union is always stronger in cinema if it's a single shot, rather than if you do it with an editing effect. Because you show the continuity, the organic continuity between the object and people. You see what I mean? So I would say I would need this wide shot. Then I would have to put myself into the circle and to have an idea of people, how they are experiencing it, and then to have what is located in the center, and then have at least 1 shot of what is located in the center and people with it. And then perhaps for editing it's good to have close shots that gives you the possibility of editing and from passing from one place to another place. So I would perhaps concentrate on arms, hands, feet, and I would do close shots of this. That then will let me use these shots in the editing moment. And of course, I would need a sound shot, a shot for sound that will give me a sense of continuity. If I don't have an external recording, I will do the sound shot in the best place for sound, which is not always the best place for the camera, but this is a shot for the sound, not for the visual. So if there's someone playing music or whatever, I would try to stay close to them. But of course, if you're close to them, you're losing something. And this idea of I'm losing something else, it's what creates this sign of anxiety. This is why it is important to know what you are going to film before filming it. It is true that you discover realities through film, but it's true also that if you can anticipate, because you already know a little bit, you can have this kind of list of shots in your mind, and then to put them in practice during the ritual, and not to miss important shots that you will need in the editing process. I don't know if I helped you a little bit.
Yeah, very much. Thank you.
Cinema again is the art of anticipation, and then you can be even more radical in the sense that I mean, if you want to, for example, now it's very a la mode to do close shots from below, no, from below to up, no. Well, this is fine, but you have to think why you are doing this and what kind of sense it gives. Perhaps if you have an image at the center and you do this kind of shots, you can evoke the point of view of the altar, for example. That can be interesting, but it has to have, it needs to have a sense, because if people say that the spirits are up there and you do all shots from below, it's not very coherent. And again, the way we film needs to have a kind of accommodation with the emic way of doing things. You see what I mean?
For example, how about maintaining the two point of views? Like one camera in an angle to the long shot and another one to do the
This, I mean, you will be a happy filmmaker if you have two cameras and you can do this. I filmed with different people and it's great because you have a plurality of shots. One problem of this is that you will appear in the wide shot. So, if I would put a wide camera there and then I'm just wandering around filming you, I'll be hello, I'll be on. So then you have to make a choice. Am I comfortable with the fact of appearing myself in the film or not? And if so, I mean, two cameras is good, for example, for you're filming a ritual, but that takes place on a kind of stage, like theater. Then you have a wide shot with the whole piece, and then you use your second camera just to do close shots.
I was precisely think.
This is great. The case of the circle is more complicated because if we put one camera on top and then you are into the circle, you will appear on the film, which is not bad. But I mean, you need to feel comfortable about that. What you can do is, for example, to leave one camera filming if there are musicians, and then you move around, and so you always have this idea of musician. Or if you have a main character, so, and you are two cameras, what we usually do is one follows the main character and the other one does some contextual shots that can give you the possibility. For example, what is very difficult is, for example, I mean, two volunteers. That if you sit here and here and you talk to each other, and if we were in fiction and you have a conversation, it's rather easy. You put one camera here and you say your text, and then we put the other camera here and she says the text, and then we edit it. But if you have just one camera, it's much more difficult. First mistake, when you have to, usually you film at the height of the eyes of people. But if you are filming people who are sat like this and you do this, I mean, it's rather strange. So I would keep the camera here. This is a classical initial mistake, and those who have a lot of hair will not appreciate this kind of shots. So The thing is that if you have two lavaliers, for example, it's easy because you are recording the sound anyway. Okay. Then, but if you are having a conversation, and you have different ways of doing this, but either you do a shot here of you two, and you have one single shot, okay, which is great, or you take close shots, and then you follow the person who's filming. But the thing is that sometimes people start to interrupt each other, and they have ideas. So the time you go to the second one has finished the sentence, and the first one is starting a new sentence. So you're going like this all the time, and it's rather difficult. What can you do? I mean, there's different techniques. First, you can alter reality a little bit, trying people to say, okay, try not to interrupt too much each other, please. But another possibility is, first you follow the person who's speaking, you arrive a little bit late to the second one, but then in order to make it, to edit it, you need the shots of those listening to the others. So for example, at the end of the conversation, I would film, and if you are talking about something which is not very interesting, I would film you listening and doing this. Because this is very important. And I would film you doing the same thing. So for example, at the end of a very important conversation, I try to ask a question that perhaps is not very important. I mean, it's not, have you ever been in Barcelona? Do you think it's beautiful? No. Something more relevant, but which is not extremely important, but that gives me the possibility of having a shot of people listening. Because then this shot will be necessary. You see what I mean? To edit the film. What I would avoid is what a lot of what we see in television is that there is, for example, a shot of the hands doing this, or of some flowers on a table, or a cat just passing through, because they are meaningless. They don't say anything about what's going on. You see what I mean? So in this case, I would have a shot of you two, and then if I had short, I would follow the flow of the voice, but I will try to have long shots of people listening as well to make it editable. And it will require probably to make kind of artificial questions to make this longer and to grasp the shots off. So when you have an action, you need to have shots of the effects of the action on other people. So if you concentrate on the possessed, you can't make a film on someone who's possessed all the time. You need to have shots about people who are attending the ritual. But it doesn't mean that it means that you are losing something, of course. But this film, these shots have to be made at some point. And for example, if there's elements of visual culture that are important, like posters or images or whatever, don't film these things while something very important is happening. Because you're going to lose, I mean, you can't film these images and posters at any time. And then you use it in, because I mean, if someone is possessed and you're filming a painting, I mean, please, I mean, you have to, it's not very original. So another important thing is that, for example, if you can, if you hold a hand, and that imagine situations and try to replicate them with your friends before starting to go. Imagine that I'm a healer, and we are making a divination ritual, no? You and me, and I'm just reading coffee or smoke or whatever. What will you do? What will you will, of course, the particularity of the stone, for example. That's great.
Okay, and then try to, I don't know, maybe enlarge a bit. I think also that I would concentrate the landscape around you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
are who is
I'm
divinating.
throwing stones
Okay.
and doing divination stuff.
So maybe this, maybe first of all, I will concentrate with you, okay, on you, and your particular, I don't know, your accessories, I don't know, if you have something, and then try to watch reactions. Maybe.
Okay. If you can get her and a part of me, it's great, because you always have this idea of continuity. So the important thing in a divination is the contact, not the continuity between the healer, the patient, let's say, and the objects of being used. No? So this triangle is the one that you have to evoke. And it's strong if you can evoke it in single shots, and not only in editing. And so this kind of situation you can imagine and anticipate. But then there is another thing. Sequences needs a beginning and an ending. It's very abrupt to finish a thing like this. Plus, so, for example, the starting of the situation, sometimes you need to, in a way, fictionalize it a little bit. It's not a problem. Don't be that shy. I mean, you can tell, can you just, you entered this room because this is a consultation room, okay? So you are entering there, and you can say, can you enter again? And I follow you, as if, as you have done. Usually people accept it because, I mean, it's a very simple thing, but it gives you a narration, because what the sequences needs a beginning and an ending, otherwise you can't edit it. So you can follow this person, and then arriving here, and then follow me saying hello, I'm here, and then you have. And the same goes for the ending. The problem is that sometimes these things last for 3 hours, and the film it's 3 minutes. But again, you need an ending. So what could be a nice ending? So a nice ending would be, for example, a long shot of the stones, and then the voice behind just talking. But you need this shot. You can do something different, and when she says, she's that, okay, I hope that the future is going to be better. And then you can do something more dramatic, and you go to her eyes, and you do a very close shot of the eyes, and you finish like this. Or if you are part of the ritual, and you are a character of the ritual, you can do the way back. You go back, and you just leave them there, and you go back with the camera, and you give the impression that they remain there, and that you go somewhere else. But in this case, as your movement is very subjective, it would be important for you to be identified as a character in the film itself. Or you can focus on a material element of the room, okay? But you have to figure out how to end a sequence when you are filming, because otherwise it can be difficult. And for example, I would avoid to be in the middle between her and me. That would be very disruptive in the literal sense of the word, but it would be a problem. When you have a healer, usually in healing rituals, you have the interaction between the healer and the patient, those attending the rituals, and the material objects used for the healing process. So these are 4 elements, and you can anticipate the connections between these 3. So you know that you need a wide shot of this, and then shots of each one, but also shots of the interaction between them. You see what I mean? So it's not that difficult. It's just somehow, so in a way, it's just a matter of common sense that you will need. Yeah?
I'm wondering something. Like, for example, I watched this with like professor, and you were constantly like moving with them, going through them. Isn't it like some way of like getting in the middle, like between the healer and the other person? Doesn't it like work more or less the same way, or is it different in some way? Like you were saying, you could have just gone in the middle of the circle in my case, for example, but I would have like thought that I was interrupting that and interfering with the ritual and stuff like that. Like I don't know, maybe there's a right way to do that and a wrong way to do that. I don't
Well,
really know.
the good way to find out if it's the good way is to do it. Because then if it's not the good way, you will learn it and probably you will make a mistake. But I mean, mistakes are fine and necessary to conduct a research. What I would say is that you have to do some gym with camera and to learn to follow people and to be close to them. Usually we use, wide angle and then you stay. Of course, if you are too close, it can be invasive. But if you follow the movement, it is very different rather than, for example, to locate yourself between an altar and a person. I would never do this because you really cut the connection. If someone is in movement and that you are following this person, in a way, you are respecting the movement. You are not going against it. You are following this flow. And this is also a way of respecting it. What I wouldn't do, or for example, what I would ask for permission is if you have a circle of people going on that way, and you want to do a very artistic, let's say, shot in the opposite direction. So they are moving on the right and you are doing a shot on the left, so they are disappearing like this. It can be very beautiful. But it can be problematic in a ritual point of view because a ritual is a negotiation of movements, intensities. It's a choreography. And it's not always easy to disrupt a choreography, even in ordinary life. Okay? So in this case, I would ask, would this shot be possible? Otherwise, if you follow the flow, I don't think it is a problem, honestly. And this is the way that when you film, in a way, it's like the wind. You are pushed by the action. It's an art of imitation in a way. This is why I said that you become the shadow of what do you film. In the sense, and sometimes not, because for example, you're in a very static position right now. I could do something more dynamic and just passing from one place to another, huh? But this, if I did a very artistic shot like this, well, there is you have to think, what do I want to say by that? Because there has a spirit flowing here and going around. That it was a very happy session, or do I want to show the idea that it was something longer and heavier and whatever? In this case, I would use a different kind of shots. You see? Because the way you film the thing tells you something about this thing. It's a mode of signification. And the important thing is to anticipate. And for example, if someone is is laying on the ground because this person is sick, how can you film this? It's not that easy.
No. Maybe I would film it like standing where the feet are and like seeing the person from the feet towards the
down or up.
No, up.
Up.
Yeah. To have like
Depends on why the person's lying down. My choice depends on why. Because if it's a ritual connection to the ground, it would be pretty cool to film from the bottom. But if it's something else, it might be interesting to actually film from the top and get a connection of like a large place and the small size of this body like that. It depends. Again, it depends on the effect of the thing itself.
If you are not sure, I would make both. And then you can use video elicitation to talk to people. For example, with these cameras, you can put the camera like this and film from the ground. And then you can film from the point of view of those who are not laid down. And then you can comment with people and you say, I've done this, what do you prefer? They say, this one, why? And I mean, this doesn't mean that you have to use only the one that they have chosen, but it can give you an idea of what's the best solution. But people on the ground is very difficult to edit, especially with big cameras, because you can't use a tripod, you can leave the camera on the ground. I would at least have one camera on the ground, and then perhaps 2 shots of the interaction between the person and the one performing the ritual. One from the point of view of the person having the ritual, so from the shoulder, this way, and the other one from the other one point of view, and then I would try to have a wide shot of both, which is very difficult because it has to be really, really wide. When you see, but you have to, you can anticipate all this a little bit. It's fine. But I think it's too. And that we are tired, and I hope this seminar was useful. I enjoyed it very, very much.
We're just thinking of breaking and coming back, right?
I'm here till tomorrow morning, so I'm available for more questions. And do not hesitate to write me, to get in contact if I can be of any help. And I think that we all have to thank Emily again for organizing this project, this wonderful conference, and this seminar. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this work with your students and colleagues.
Well, thank you for being here, for coming at Sapienza, for being here in person after many workshops we did online with the pandemic. So it's great to also to share the space and move around and practice and see this kind of positioning of the camera, these practical issues that weren't possible online. So this is the 4th workshop, if we consider also yesterday's workshop in visual anthropology related to healing, and we hope to continue both these discussions on ethnographic films, but also these practical labs at different universities or...
Yeah, and actually we could do more in the future, also with some exercises imitating. And I would encourage you to film with your friends and colleagues that, for example, these kind of situations that you can anticipate. Someone is on the ground, there is a healer, there is a musician. I mean, it's rather easy to anticipate it and to recreate it with your friends, and it's not a waste of time to try to see how you move in it, and it will give you so much more confidence when you're on the field to film it and to anticipate potential unexpected events, which are always very welcome in anthropology, but at the same time very challenging.
Thank you, Grazia. Fascinating, and his films are also available on the Hill website. Those who are open access, and we have also a section on training on the website that can be useful also for teaching purposes. So thank you very much.